All right, everybody, it's 420. You know what that means. It's National High Time. Time to get your smoking utensils out and spark up.
You are now
Tuned in to the
420
collaboration.
podcast.
Hey, and welcome to 420 Collaboration Podcast. I'm Zeno, and as always, Jake.
Hey,
And today we have a special guest from Canada, the Canna Canuck. How are
Hi,
you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks for
no
joining
problem.
us.
I didn't realize this was gonna. I know Zoom was video. I didn't realize it was gonna go up on video. But I'm wearing my glass blowing clothes right now, so you'll have to
Awesome.
see me.
Oh, that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, wow, that's
Oh my
cool.
God.
Yes, yeah. And that actually came from cannabis. So there you go.
Oh
Yeah,
my Lord.
that's another positive thing that cannabis does, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
So if you could just do a small introduction, and just tell us a little bit about, you.
Okay. Well, I am the Canna Canuck. I guess you could say, like, as my catchphrase says, I'm the heavily meditated and medicated um, legal
Love
plant.
it. Love it.
So I started on the cannabis scene, the public cannabis scene, not too long ago, actually, just a little over a year. And the following and the response to my going on there and the things that I talk about, or being a female in my position, a mom, and a heavy cannabis user, a productive one, mind you. It
Mm.
garnered such a response and such overwhelming support, and just a lot of people seem to relate well. So it's just blossomed from there, and here I sit.
No, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
so what's something that you found that helped draw you to understanding that cannabis is more than just a recreational thing and a medicinal substance, something that helps out.
Um, well, oddly enough, I never really knew it as a recreational thing. I was exclusively a med patient, and I mean, my rec use with cannabis was limited to very like less than a handful of times, and I had a negative view of it overall, if I'm honest. And
Right.
I was hit by a truck. I was a pedestrian in a crosswalk of my son's
Like a
school.
literal truck.
Yes, one of those one-ton dually trucks. He
Damn.
he had stopped so many feet before the crosswalk. The driver had been distracted by a little lady on the side of the road. I was crossing in the crosswalk, and she had run up and turned a corner, and he gunned it to impress her or whatever it was, but hadn't seen me. So I was hit.
My
I flew
Lord.
10 to 15 feet, and I hit the ground, and I skid a farther amount on the ground, and I didn't walk properly for 2 years after that. And
And
Wow.
and
yeah,
I'm sorry that you had to endure that 100%.
Mm.
um,
It
I'm
seems like
in a
you're
way I
great
am.
now.
But in a way I'm not, because
Right.
at that point in time, like I said, I did live in a very closeted mindset in a lot of different ways.
Right.
Not necessarily just about cannabis, but being injured and losing mobility, losing, my physical strength, things that I've been so proud of and so easily done before. It really gave
Right.
me a different appreciation for my body, for people, and for cannabis, because I had a choice. I was 5 different prescription medications that could have damaged my liver, been habit forming. Opiates was one of them that I had the option of taking, and I never did, because I came from a family where that was so prevalent. And I was afraid of that more so than cannabis. So at the time, that was my lesser of two evils. And that was my only option. And thank God I tried it, because it gave me my life back.
Right. No,
Mhm.
100%. And it looks like I feel like it changed your life in a positive perspective where you feel like you can educate yourself more than just making the blind eye approach to things, and doing your due diligence.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually really astounds me when you say that you were not a recreational user, you were a medicinal user from start to finish for the most part. Like everybody has
Yeah.
their fun or whatever, but
Yeah.
that's like a solemn thing for you. And
Um, yeah, I actually, my recreational use of cannabis, I said it was limited to a couple times, but it was so limited that one of those times included smoking it so that I could then dump a boyfriend that was a serious,
wow,
like he was a stoner, a heavy stoner. But the problem was he was lying to me about it. I was 17. I had my son very young. And I was dating someone that at the time, it was illegal in Canada. I didn't want illegal drugs in my house. I was a young parent. I was a paranoid
fair,
parent. I came from a background where I smelled the cannabis, but there were other drugs used in the family that I was
right,
seeing those behaviors, but associating them with cannabis.
right,
So it was extremely limited. And part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I believe so strongly in educating yourself. And that's part of why I was no longer afraid when I truly became educated. And I don't believe that lends itself to just solely cannabis, but I try and do what I do so that more parents will educate themselves on more aspects of their own health, not just cannabis, your diet, what you put into your body, your body. Like we'll research things on Amazon and read a billion reviews before we buy some gadget or our next phone. But we don't know
right,
about our own health care for real,
right.
especially this nowadays.
True.
Now what's going on? So
Right. No, 100%. I mean, like, I think this goes back to something that I say quite often, which is reading a fucking book, people,
That's
and
his famous
educating
line.
yourself. It's like one of my favorite things to do ever because, like, people apparently, you don't know how to write cursive or read now. So, like,
mhm,
it's just not a thing
it's a
unless
lot
it's
of
through, like, LOL texting stuff.
mhm.
Um, but I wanted to jump on topic to something that I think a lot of our viewers could benefit from, a lot of our like entrepreneurial viewers, and that's you do a blog that is not yet presented itself, but we are excited to read it. Don't worry, we'll get a bunch of people over there. Make sure you guys will see it. Don't worry, we'll put the tag right around there. Um, but what is it that you blog about, and why do you blog?
Well, I had started in originally, so I came from a background of marketing and advertising sales. And then I was hit, and then I ended up becoming a stay-at-home mom. And in that, I started with my passion about health and natural living, and I started making my own body products at home and dealing with transitioning to organic diet and healthcare and all that stuff. And so I started to write at the time about that, and I was actually the Crunchy Canuck before I was the Canna Canuck. So
Okay.
I do have a little thing that was my old one, but somebody had stolen that, unfortunately, stole my images, my intellectual property, things like that. So
Just take it
before
as flattery. Take it as flattery.
yes, yes. So before I launched the cannacanuck.com, I had to make sure that all my ducks were in a row and everything is trademarked here. But what I started writing about, I already do write on a consistent basis on my Instagram. A lot of my stuff is longer, and a lot of that is writing about the challenges as a female in particular, uh, especially one who's aging into their 30s, overcoming a lot of physical challenges and barriers, having limited mobility on the right side of my body, but then
Right.
also being a medical patient for pain, and then also being, a mental health patient, treating cannabis for or using cannabis for treatment for PTSD, anxiety. So I talk about those kinds of things and my own challenges, bearing that and giving others confidence to then discuss some of their own. So oftentimes I'll be writing about my weight loss. I lost 65 pounds since my
Awesome.
Instagram account, which is actually a really tiny human being. So 65 pounds is a lot for any person, but on me, that's over half of my current body weight. So
Yeah, that's
like that's
insane.
more
Good
than
for
half. So
you.
I was a little
Mm.
round thing before, but
That's okay. You were just
and part of,
comfortable.
yeah, part of that was
Yeah,
true.
exactly.
So I write a lot of those things to connect with other people that may not realize that they're not alone. And through that, I think that's why it's garnered such a large following in such a small amount of time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And good for you. I mean, way to approach it positively. Like that's what I try to do is always put a positive spin on almost everything I approach because I feel like that's gonna change the world. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
one ridiculous person at a time.
Well,
Um,
yeah, that's what I say. Sometimes it just takes showing up. Like just you don't always necessarily have to be totally positive either, but present. I
right.
find that a lot of that is lacking in today's
Mm.
society, and especially with what I do in that whole influencer category, and Instagram itself and social media. Everything is so damn fake, like so fake. And we all know that, we all see it, where so I try and bring a little bit of humanity back into that, and a little bit of that realness. And it isn't always positivity, it isn't always love and light, it's not always perfect makeup and shit. And sometimes I'm in my glass blowing fulls on my account, and sometimes I'm talking to people in a sweaty t-shirt, like because
Right.
that's the whole point. You sometimes just in today's need a little bit of real and need a little bit of consistency. Somebody
r-
that gives a shit about
A
somebody
lot,
else beyond.
a lot of consistency.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's where that can make a difference too. Just holding on to a little bit of that. And I find a lot of men, oddly enough, I have a few very solid, very regular guys that say that same kind of stuff. Like, you've inspired me, you've helped me, with those kind of things. And I think they gravitate more towards the not always being so upbeat. Women we have to, like, a woman will ask another woman, are you happy? And our standard answer is, of course. But
Right.
I think you guys, I think you guys kind of gravitate a little bit more to seeing that actual challenge from a real person, because you guys deal with a lot of that shit by yourselves day to day too, right? I mean, not to say the ladies don't, but I think that's why there's a mix of the solid that aren't just there for the booty pics and stuff.
Yeah, and I
Personally,
mean, no,
I feel like you're right onto something. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I
no
think
worries.
that we just have to understand that everybody's their own person. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, be cool with being your own individual. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You know what
And
I mean? Like,
at the end of the day, I think that's why the guys actually are gravitating towards you, is because you show that off. You know, it's
right.
it's very it's like an aura. It like drags you to it. You know what I mean?
Thank
So
you.
let me touch back on the mother with cannabis thing. So what would you say to other mothers who are considered using cannabis?
Um, Education is key, I think, and moderation as well. So when I first started, I had a little chillum. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but they're like the little teeny one hitter tubes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
all I smoked at the start. And it didn't quite manage my pain, but I really didn't want to be inebriated around my children.
Right.
So I started with that, and that I think is essential to maintaining a respectable usage of cannabis, to being able to understand it fully and explain it to someone else, and to really be able to use it most effectively for yourself as well, for whatever you're using it for. There are
Hmm.
certain types or certain terpenes or certain ways of consuming. that may be best for you. So I think if you're going to talk to a parent, I think it's most important that parents really start with moderation and education, and expect open communication about it as well. It's not something that you can avoid. It's not a topic that you can avoid, and I don't think it's a topic you should avoid.
No, I think, I mean, like, I don't drink alcohol. You know what I mean? Like,
Neither.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that in that respect, like I have 5 children. They range age 15 to 3. Yeah, yeah, so it's a
Wow.
busy, very busy, very loud house. And a lot of different challenges with the different age ranges and trying to navigate that, right? So how do you have responsible cannabis use in front of a teenager while still attempting to deter a teenager from their own cannabis use? You know, or you know, how to properly teach your children to respect the plant, understand that, and then maybe potentially communicate with others about it as well, because you don't want any sort of bad information floating around or anything like that. Really having full understanding in the home is, I think, for me, is key. So we try and discuss cannabis straight from growth to consumption, and even teaching safety to my teenager. So we're at the stage where, you know, I understand parents have been there, you know, like what can you do as a cannabis user to best prepare other cannabis users? And I think there's a lot of stuff that I wish someone had told me so that I could, you know, like, right? So,
Preach it. Preach it.
that brings up, that actually brings up the next question that I had for you. And what is, let's say, your top 3? What's your big 3 on advice? If you could give your, like, a younger you advice on what to do in getting into this as an entrepreneur and how to successfully navigate yourself. 3 pieces.
as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
okay. Remember that everyone wants something.
100%.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time you got to be smart about that, because I made some mistakes early on trying to help too many,
Yep.
for you know, not thinking of that as a business. So no matter how passionate you are about the plant, no matter how passionate you are about the social scene, if you're going to get into cannabis as a business or as an entrepreneur, you have to get into it as a shark. And you have to understand that the people that are coming from this are your legacy market, your OGs, your badasses, and your major dealers from back in the day, or these are your
100.
big wigs, your, you know, your big machines, and your legal conglomerates. And then you have a bunch of fledgling people in the middle that all bounce and ping pong off each other. And you got to really, really navigate that very smart, but understand that is a business.
Right.
So that would be my number one thing is watch your back and understand it's a business.
Smart.
The second would be, I think, regardless of that, to not lose the passion in it and not lose sight of the fact that this truly does help people.
Okay.
And to really
does.
keep that as your main focus.
So it's a
Because if you
medicine.
do-
It
yeah,
is a business, but it is a medicine, people.
exactly. And if you lose sight of that, then you're no better than anybody else here. And in my opinion, you're no service to the space.
Right. No,
I
absolutely.
find a lot of, you know, the only things I take away from that are what's been brought in by those types of machines. So I think to really remember and to step back and enjoy it for what it is, as the plant itself, and to not lose sight, not lose focus of that every day if you have to, because it's sometimes hard.
No, absolutely. I mean, I constantly try to take a positive approach in almost everything I do, and that is not something that's a simple thing to do. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm.
experienced some wild experiences on my day to day,
Oh
and
yeah. Like, well, I
I'm
say the
still here.
funniest thing about cannabis is it brings together the most random, just crazy cross section of people that you could ever possibly imagine that under any different circumstance would never be together in the same room,
Yeah.
in the same circle, in the same sash,
Right.
and yet we still do. And for those perfect, precious 5 minutes or however long that lasts, people remain in that circle with absolutely no judgment. And
Right.
Yes.
that's one of the most beautiful things for me, and why I stay in the social scene, even with the business aspect having all of its all of its
Right.
fun and all of its perks, but why I keep going out and doing the social scene as much as I do, and with as much enthusiasm as I do, because it's crazy.
Don't stop. You know what I mean?
It
Don't
is.
let other people stop you from being you.
Mhm.
I know that I work real hard at being me. My wife works really hard at being her, and she's an amazing individual.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and Zeno does the same. It's just one of those things. So like once you meet the like-minded people, just connect and move up. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like take that
I love
balloon and start going. Um,
Yes, that's
and
the cannabis community. The real
right,
cannabis community.
the
The ultimate,
real
yeah.
cannabis
That,
community.
and you
Yeah.
just said it there, sister. That's
Yeah,
exactly
no,
what it is.
100%. The
The
real
real
one.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Um,
that's what I find is when you meet those connections, that is the general thing for everyone. You are there because you love the plant. You love, educating others and making sure that you have other like minds, because we are still only in, I think in Canada, I believe it's 17% of our overall population smokes. So like you gotta think that's still very small.
right.
Yeah.
No,
Federally
I,
absolutely.
banned.
That's not a ton.
I
That's
would have thought that number would have been a little bit high with it being federal, you
I
know.
think like on a regular basis, I think that's our percentage of regular consistent smokers in Canada. I could be wrong, but I
Probably
just
went
heard
down.
that this
It
week.
probably went down the moment that it became legal. Everybody was like, no longer fun to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You know what
because
I
some
mean?
of the people, they're not medicinal or
Not cool.
just use it every once in a while. Some of them just get a kick out of like doing
yeah,
something that
yeah,
not enough to get me put away for life, but it is a little bit
yeah,
on the bad side. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Right.
yeah. If it's lost the boss, we're not doing it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I use
Now
it for
we've got
medicinal
now we've got
myself, so.
psilocybin in the works for that. Now
Mm.
that's on the edge. That'll be legalized next, but everybody needs to get their kicks that way. Psilocybin will be next for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's new strains every day, so there's constantly new stuff being invented, new progress, all this stuff, new research is coming out. There's so much stuff that needs to come out to educate, and like you touched before, education is the key, and
Mhm.
100%.
that's
Yeah.
really what
You
we
can't
have
get
to
that
get to.
taken away from you, people. You can't get it taken away from you. You know what I mean?
Well,
You
it's
can
kind of hard
educate
out there.
yourself.
So what is your take on like the industry as a whole? Do you think that it's moving in a direction as togetherness, or are people just getting to the spot and going and like, you know what I mean?
I think that here in Canada, we've done a really good job making sense out of a system, making political and quick sense out of a system that needed some wrangling really quickly. So I think the framework that we started with and our overall view to it here, stigma-wise, acceptance, everything, it's great. Like I don't have any complaints.
Hmm.
My complaints would be in the dosage amounts, the lack of support, proper care for the products itself or the medical patients, and understanding that our needs may extend a little bit beyond what's offered now or what's coming in the way of edibles and things like that. But I
Hmm.
think the industry um, the legal side is moving towards the understanding that you're not going to eliminate the legacy market, and they need to find a good middle ground with it. So I think that we saw the original legalization, we've seen a little bit more leeway, and I think we'll see more leeway still. So I can only hope that we are moving in that good direction. But fact of the matter is, no matter what direction we had, Canada's still going to be set for bud. So I'm the Canna Canuck. Thanks for tuning in to 420 Collaborations Podcast.